Hi, everyone. My name is Christina, and I'm the Family Programs Coordinator at the Vancouver Art Gallery. Thanks so much for joining us today, for spending your time with us here. So I have the very cool job of looking at art with people, learning about art, and talking about art. And today, I want to thank UNYA's Overly Creative Minds team for asking me to share some artwork that I love and that I've learned a little bit about. And hopefully you can also share some of your thoughts and ideas too through our session. So joining us today, we have Keilah and Catherine from UNYA's Overly Creative Minds, the creative minds behind it, I will say. Catherine, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing okay, thanks. I'm doing all right. And we have Keilah here joining us as well.
Hi, guys. So I'm just, sorry, guys, I'm just still trying to share the watch party here. I was able to share it to our Overly Creative Minds page, just not our personal page.
Well, how about you take a minute, feel free to get that set up, and hopefully everyone joining us from the Vancouver Art Gallery page can kind of follow along to get us going today as we get the watch party set up so as many participants can join as possible. And for those of you who have registered on Zoom, thank you for joining us. Feel free to, if there's questions, ideas, suggestions, feel free to pop them into the chat. Feel free to just say hi to Catherine and Keilah and I here today. Yeah, we're so glad that you can make it. So today we're going to talk about an artist who combines her Coast Salish cultural knowledge with her own unique vision and creates incredible artworks that you can actually see all over the city, whether you know it or not. You might have seen her work without even knowing. She's a carver, a printmaker, a glass artist, jewelry maker, just to name a few of the ways that she creates, and her name is Susan Point. So,
okay.
we did.
We are not able to start a watch party. My only option is actually just to share it to a page. Okay. So I'm hoping that people, it's on our Overly Creative Minds community page, so people can access it there. So maybe I'll make, Catherine, can you maybe quickly make a post about that on our
for sure.
Page? Great.
Thank you, Keilah and Catherine, for making
that. Just say that it's available on our Overly Creative Minds page for any youth who might want to join.
I have actually figured it out and started the watch party, so we are watching now live.
Thank you.
No all right, well, I'll just say again quickly to those of you who are just joining us, thank you so much for joining us. And we're all learning about these new platforms of ways of connecting to each other and talking. So you know, sometimes it takes a few minutes. So I appreciate us just being able to connect with everyone. So again, for those of you who have missed it, my name is Christina and I am a Family Programs Coordinator at the Vancouver Art Gallery. And I get to talk about art and learn about art. And I mean, the best part is really talking about art while you're in the space with the work itself. But it's pretty cool that we can also connect together on Zoom as well. So Keilah and Catherine, I'll just mention your names again. Hey, Catherine, how are you doing?
Hi, everyone.
Hi. And thank you, Keilah. Keilah and Catherine are program coordinators from UNYA's Overly Creative Minds program.
I guess we're still waiting on Elder Bruce here.
Oh, he's here. Do you see him? Hi, Elder Bruce.
Can you see me now and hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry for the late one here because I was just in a meeting. I had to leave for a bit here and then I got to go back again. Right, you know, and that, so yeah, busy, right, you know, and that, and it's, I was an honor that, you know, we can still gather in some kind of way, right, you know, and that, so that we can, you know, join each other's with a good heart and good mind, right, you know, and that, so I'll start off with a song and say a prayer and then, you know, and that, and okay, can you see me okay?
Yeah, you're good. Thank you, Elder Bruce.
Yeah, there was a young lady that made me this at Métis Family Services, right? You know, and she made the drum, right? And she painted, and she said that this is a spirit buffalo. That'll every time you sing it, that spirit buffalo will be with you, right? You know, and that, and whenever I sing and use it to sing, I always remember her and keep her in my heart and keep her in my mind, right? So she can go through life in a good way. You know, and that. So as I sing my song, you pray in your heart in your own way for the things you're looking for yourself and for others. So. Great spirits, grandmothers, grandfathers, so grateful for today, so grateful for everything you have given us in our lives, so grateful for bringing us together in a good way with a good heart, a good mind. I ask that you bless everyone here in this sacred circle, bless everyone, touch their hearts, touch their minds, touch their spirit, touch the hearts and minds of all our families. Touch the hearts and minds of all our youth that we work with. Touch them in a good way. Empower them to go through life in a good way. Empower them to see the beauty that is within them, their soul, their spirit. Empower them to see the beauty that's all around them. Empower them to heal themselves. Empower them to heal others in a good way, with a good thought and a good mind. So grateful for our beautiful and loving Mother Earth. Mother Earth, please forgive us for anything we've done to harm you in any way, Mother Earth. Please forgive us and be kind and gentle to us when you bring back balance in this area, Mother Earth. Be kind and gentle to us. We love you and honor you, Mother Earth, for the sustenance of life. We love you and honor you for all our lives. So grateful for the people of these lands and the ancestors of these lands, which is the Coast Salish. So grateful for all our ancestors, for without them we would not be here today. So grateful for your guidance, your wisdom, and your knowledge that you share openly with us every single day of our lives. Guide us well in the things we need to do for each other. Guide us well in the things we need to do for ourselves. Guide us well in this meeting here today. So we're gonna have the best outcome for all the ones we work with. Guide us well, great spirits, grandmothers, grandfathers. Guide us well, guide us well, guide us well. Thank you, great spirits. Thank you, grandmothers. Thank you, grandfathers. Thank you for everything. Thank you. As you can see in here, I always, acknowledge and pray for the people of these lands, but I also give great thanks to the ancestors of these lands, right? And that which is Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish, right? And that. And I'm sorry I can't stay, but I have to run back down to that other meeting here, and I thank you for having me today. Right, and you guys take care, stay safe, stay healthy, take care of yourselves. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Elder Bruce.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Wow, what an honor to have Elder Bruce join us and set us in that direction for today, and a kind of prayer of gratitude and appreciation. And in that, on that note, I want to share today a little bit about an artist who combines her Coast Salish cultural knowledge with her own unique vision and creates incredible works that we can see all over the city of Vancouver on Coast Salish land. So I'm actually of settler heritage, and my on the Beothuk land in Newfoundland. So I'm not going to be sharing about cultural practices that are Indigenous or that are Coast Salish. What I am going to do is share about some artwork from the perspective of who I am, about some art that I love and that I'm very grateful that people have been very generous to share some information about this artwork with me. I'm going to use the artist's words that have been published. I'm going to use the artist's voice from interviews, actually the words too from the artist's children, and the artist, as I mentioned earlier, is Susan Point. So I do also want to note with respect that today I will be talking about a work that Susan Point created in response to her experience in the residential school system and the continuing impacts about halfway through the session. So let's take a look at some of these incredible works together. As mentioned, feel free to join us in the chat as we connect here together. Susan Point said, as an artist, I've been very fortunate to draw upon the rich legacy of a traditional visual language. My Salish ancestors bestowed on their future generations the gift of a powerful culture rooted in teaching of respect for all life, passed down through an oral tradition, supported by a diverse treasure of art. So in this session today, we're going to talk about the incredible life and work of Susan Point through her words, as I mentioned. We're going to consider some of the Coast Salish design elements that she's worked very hard to learn about, that she uses in her work. We're going to do this through another Coast Salish carver who's going to share a really cool video resource that he's created from his perspective and from his knowledge. His name is Qualtius. And then we're also going to think about our own respect for nature, our connections to land around us, and how we can kind of express that through works of our own. So at the end of the session, I'm going to show you how Susan Point inspired me to create a print. I'm going to use design elements from my own imagination that express, like I said, my connection to land and nature. And then I'll explain how you can do it as well. The materials we'll be using, upcycled styrofoam, pencils, washable markers, water, and paper. So this is a work that you're looking at right now by Susan Point. It's called Spirit of Mother Earth. It's a carving in yellow cedar. And in an interview, when Susan Point describes carving in cedar, she says, the calmness and serenity of working on a piece was so enjoyable. So think about that space of kind of calmness and serenity that's created as you're really engaged in something, as you're doing something that you love and you're passionate about. Think about when that time is for you. Let's take a look at an interview with Susan Point so she can introduce herself and her own ideas through her voice.
I tried to show the connection between all things because they are all connected. And a good example is the enduring spirits. It's a cycle of life. It goes in a circle. It's the web of life. You have the bears dragging the salmon onto the forest floor, and they leave scraps. Then it's picked up by the roots of the tree, and it goes into the tree, and then the birds come, and they eat whatever it is, the pine cones or berries or whatever, and it's a circle. It just keeps going. I've always been interested in art, right from childhood. And it wasn't until later in life that I discovered I had my own art form, the Coast Salish art style. My greatest influences would be my mother, who told me a lot of legends and stories when she was young, and also my Uncle Dominic Point, who also told me various legends, and my uncle, Dr. Michael Chu as well, who was the professor out at UBC at the time and specialized in Coast Salish art and culture. I like to do public art because I like the public to understand what our art form is, and you know, it gives everyone a chance to see the piece as opposed to doing work for private clients. I believe you can't make an artist an artist. You know, it's inbred within you. To leave behind all of this is something for my grandchildren to carry on in the future. That's what I hope.
I always love getting to see the tools that artists use as they're creating, and of course, hearing their voice, the inspiration behind their work. And I liked what she mentioned about public art as well. I don't know if anyone recognized some of the works that were in that video from things that they've seen around the city. It was Vancouver. But so I'll tell you a few things about Susan Point. She was born in 1952 in Alert Bay to her parents, Edna Grant Point and Anthony Point, while they were on a fishing trip, actually. And she describes herself as a contemporary artist of Coast Salish descent. So when I say contemporary art, I mean art that was made now or recently. So kind of in the last 20 years or so, we consider that contemporary art. So contemporary artist is an artist that has been working in the last 20 years. And as we mentioned at the start of this session, through Elder Bruce Robinson, the Vancouver Art Gallery where Melissa and I work is on Coast Salish territory on the land of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. Where I'm presenting today is actually the land, the unceded territory, the land of the Comox people. And Susan Point is a member of the Musqueam community. So it's really important to learn about Musqueam culture, of course, from Musqueam people. And I'm going to put some links in the chat that are really great educational resources. You can see them on the screen too. To hear a little bit more about Musqueam worldview from those voices and hear stories and learn a little bit more about that culture. I want to thank Mac Paul as well, the protocol coordinator from the Musqueam Band, for giving us permission to share these links with us. So let's now take a closer look at some of Point's contemporary artworks and find out what she is sharing about her heritage with us. So Point had an exhibition at the Vancouver Art Gallery in 2017, and she said she wanted visitors to learn that Coast Salish art has its own beautiful visual language. Visual language means kind of like a communication of ideas, but with images rather than words. And she says, I hope the imagery is interpreted as proud symbols of a living tradition. So let's take a look at some of her earliest works. This is a work from 1981. Let's look at the print together and we'll consider some of the things that Point said in the video. Like we can think about how she talked about her interest in expressing cycles of life and that sense of a circle. We're going to see that theme of movement and rotation and cycles as we look throughout the rest of her work as well. So, and you can think about too, what's the first thing that you notice when you look at this work? What really stands out to you? And we're going to talk about that as we look at each work. Really think about what's the first thing that your eye goes to. And then the longer you look at these works, every single work I find, I'll speak for myself, the longer I look, the more that I see. So it's nice to take a moment to really look. So when Susan Point created this print, she was working as a secretary for the Alliance Tribal Council. And she did this from 1974 to 1982. She also began studying jewelry design at Vancouver Community College. And she made time for herself nightly to make art. And during her maternity leave with her third child, she began making jewelry in a Northern Indigenous, in a Haida style. And as she carved jewelry at her kitchen table, she would rock her son Thomas in the cradle with her foot. And she said that this was kind of, this rocking was like a meditative motion. It gave her a calming effect so she could carve patiently. Her son Thomas recalls, Once Mom came home from work, after she had made time to clean our rooms, vacuum the house, do our laundry, and make dinner, she needed time for herself. So this is when she made art. This was a talent she had not worked on for many years. He says the kitchen table is the first place that Mom made prints. Probably some of the earliest prints have remnants of dinner that day hiding on the paper somewhere. And Thomas Cannell grew up to be a carver himself. Actually, all of Susan Point's children did. He created thunder at UBC for the 2010 Olympics within his body of work. He also designed Salish Raven, which is on the BC Ferries Gulf Island route, and a work called Vitality at Spirit Square in Deer Lake Park in Burnaby. And while discussing a work, Susan Point said, this work itself, I should say, not a work. In my contemporary style, I always include the elements of the Coast Salish, which are the crescents, wedges, and V-cuts, which are found within the art of the Salish people. When you look at the salmon, for instance, you can draw it in so many ways, and there are so many ways you can work the elements into the salmon. It's taken me many years just to research and understand Salish art. So these design elements, they're shapes and symbols of identity. Coast Salish design elements belong to and are used by Coast Salish people. So what I'd like to do now is get a chance to learn a little bit more about these design elements from another Coast Salish carver from his perspective, which is unique. It's his own knowledge, but it'll help us get a little bit of insight in a visual way. His name is Qualsius, and Qualsius is from the Keilah tribe. He's been practicing artist since 1996. And it was really cool of him. It was very generous of him to give us permission to share this in the session with us today. So let's take a look.
The Coast Salish people live in the Pacific Northwest region of North America in western Washington and southern British Columbia. The term Salish refers to a language family, and within those are several tribes. The basic design elements of Coast Salish art include circle, crescent, trigon, and extended crescent. Here in this historical photo, we see an example of a spindle whorl in use. It's comprised of two pieces, the whorl or disc and the spindle. The center of the whorl is pierced and the spindle runs through it, which allows the weaver to create material for woven textiles. This gives some insight into how the design's characterized rhythmic movement may have developed. These objects were often carved with low relief designs, like the one you see here. Another concept often used is to imagine a calm body of water enclosed by two borders, and dropping a pebble in to create ripples that carry the elements away from the center. This animation of a simple pattern of cutout shapes relates to the pebble concept and also highlights the relationship of positive and negative. So the carved out areas are the negative, and the untouched surface is the positive. So if we were to transition into painted form to highlight the positive, say blue, blue would be the positive and white would be the negative space. The distribution of design elements are not always symmetrical, and in this example, similar to a spindle whorl bird design, if we look at the wing and the negative areas, they move in a suggested direction from the main wing appendage towards the ends of the feathers. Some people use the term form line to address Coast Salish design, but this term came about as a way to discuss art created by tribes mostly north of the Coast Salish region. Form line is often comprised of two main design shapes, the ovoid and the U-form. They come together to create compositions with variation in scale and proportion. Many who created this style compose their work by building up positive shapes upon one another. Formline isn't limited to ovoid and U-form alone, however. The style on the northwest coast that perhaps lends itself best to the term formline may be the Nuu-chah-nulth of Vancouver Island. This style is often characterized by an unfolding spiral-like appearance. Coming back to the Coast Salish bird example, notice the neck is not a clean line that ends, but would continue into the body, allowing the elements to flow in a manner that begins here. Once more, by highlighting the elements red, we see they do not touch, nor do they leave a painted area that can be segmented into positive shapes. Coast Salish style undoubtedly has specific ways to define itself and has some related characteristics to other tribal styles in its region. However, unto itself, it is unique. This is but one video in a short series, so it's important to note that this is an overview of an art form that has been in practice for generations. Perhaps the best resource to understanding the Coast Salish art tradition is to study the objects themselves as they define the art as we see it today.
I want to say thank you again to Quilcius, Sean Peterson, for allowing us to share this today. I like how at the end he said how long people of the Coast Salish descent have been learning about traditions. It can't be understated how hard Susan Point worked to learn about Coast Salish design elements, and as well as all Coast Salish people practicing design elements. I posted a link in the chat as well if you'd like to learn more about his work specifically or watch more of these videos that are very visually stimulating if your mind works in that way that you learn through visualization. I know mine does. So let's take a look for a second at a few of the elements that he talked to us today. And now we're going to look at that work by Susan Point again, that early work called Salmon. And you can look for now those circles. And once you see one or two, the longer you look, you see more and more and more. And same with when you look at the crescents and what Sean Peterson, Quilcius, calls the trigon. So Susan Point also refers to this as the V-cut. So as you look at this, you see that the entire design and composition is made up of these forms. And we're going to look at these again and again through a few of Susan Point's other works. So Susan Point, she researched the visual culture of her Coast Salish ancestors when she began creating these first prints, like I mentioned. And she said at the time, there was very little to be found in terms of Coast Salish art. Regardless, I worked with all materials I had collected. I essentially reflected on traditional imagery that I had researched in the archives of Vancouver Public Library and the National Library, as well as various museums in Vancouver, Victoria, and Washington State. At the same time, however, I began creating and producing original contemporary jewelry, limited edition prints, and painted many designs on deer hide drums. All the while, I continued my research, studying from slides and interviews. And was a mother of three, not to mention I added that part in. Susan's son, Thomas Canal, explains that she worked very hard early on, studying every single Coast Salish artifact she could go see. She traveled to other cities, other countries, just to study the work of her ancestors. So let's look for these Coast Salish design elements again. This is another print. And just think about kind of what's the first thing that you notice when you look at this print. You can think about, does it have anything in common with the last work that we looked at by Susan Point? You can look for those, the Coast Salish design elements. And also another design element is that negative space that the video talked about. So here when we talk about negative space, you can kind of see like the white of the paper is the negative space. And if you look carefully, there's like a face form right in the center of the work that I didn't notice when I first saw this work, because it's using that negative space. So rather than outlining to create shape, we're seeing the use of that negative space. You can kind of see a cursor going over it here to create those forms. And again, these forms are symbols of identity, and they're transmitting knowledge, and they're transmitting how hard Susan Point worked to learn about these forms. So Susan's Point work, it's always about connection to place. It's not just inspired by nature, but a celebration of the nature and bounty of Musqueam territory, which includes the Fraser River. She describes her work as deeply connected to her Coast Salish territory. The salmon, Point explains, are considered fortuitous to many First Nations, and in some cases, a key component to our way of life, whether gathering to celebrate and feast or to barter for essentials. And she says, the animals I've used, like the salmon, are very important in Coast Salish legends and stories that were told years ago and in the artistic work done by my ancestors. You can think about, what does salmon mean to you? What do you think of when you think about salmon? Let's take a look. Let's compare two works. Again, so these are also prints, just like those first works that we talked about. We'll talk about the printing process in just a minute, but compare them. Think about what's similar about these. Look for those design elements. Look at how she's using the negative space. So she's not just creating outlines, she's using all of these shapes arranged in such a well thought out and meticulous way that it creates these forms. And also think about, how are these works giving us a sense of that motion? So you see kind of a sense of almost like that circle. So in the video, we learned a little bit about the spindle whorl. Susan Point talks about the spindle whorl a lot in her work. So that disc that's always moving in motion. So we can see how she's doing that with the elements here as well. And as I mentioned, these are prints, these are screen prints actually. I don't know if you've ever heard of a screen print before, if you've ever tried doing screen printing. Some people make it look very easy. It's actually very difficult work in my experience. I'm going to show you a quick video of a friend who is showing us the screen print process. So let's take a look at this. This is Ben Duncan from Malaspina Printmakers. If you are interested in the screen print process, Malaspina is a great place to start. They have wonderful resources. So let's take a look here. And I'll just talk over the process. So you can see the screen that's on the table there. And Ben puts the paper underneath, as you can see. And he's got a stencil burnt right into the screen that he's just pulled down. And now he's pouring the ink over and really considering the ways the colors work. So when you look at the colors in Susan Point's work, think about how she had to arrange the way she would pull the colors in different ways. So that's it. And that's a great way that you can create prints over and over and over again. Each one will always be a little bit unique. So let's take a look at some of the ways that Susan Point really experiments. Her work is unique. Like I said, she uses her own vision. She's always pushing herself to try new things. Here's a way that she's using different materials to express her knowledge and vision. So you probably can't tell from this image. Maybe we'll go up a little bit closer. Let's look at the different parts and think about what they're made out of. So this work, again, look for those Coast Salish design elements. Look at how she's trying to give us that sense of movement and motion and cycles. And this work is called Salish Moon. It was carved in 2016. She says the moon is an important element to the Salish people in that it guides the changing of the season and impacts the timing of feasts. And she also said, when she first started carving in wood, I was hooked on wood carving. I loved working with wood. The smell of the cedar while carving and seeing my art come to fruition was amazing. The calmness and serenity of working on a piece was so enjoyable. Since then, I have gone well beyond two-dimensional panels to full 360-degree monumental 3D wood sculptures. And again, think of those circular discs called spindle whorls that we looked at briefly in the video. Susan Point says, the spindle whorl is a disc which acted as a flywheel in the spinning device used for making wool yarn. The circular spindle whorl format is representative of the circle of life. Many of the ancient spindle whorl motifs that originally inspired me to practice Coast Salish art were very graphic and in some cases geometric in nature. Although I initially started studying and drawing with old whorls with human and animal forms in them, I've always admired the ones with simple geometric floral imagery. So let's take a look at another part of this artwork. So these are actually 3 pieces, as I mentioned. They're created at 3 different times that she brought together for an exhibition at the Vancouver Art Gallery in 2017. So I don't know if you can tell from this image what this part of the work is made out of. This is a material that Susan Point experimented with. She was actually one of the first Indigenous artists to work in glass. So this is glass. She started in 1986. And in 1994, she started using glass to create spindle whorls. So if you look at this work, think about, what does it remind you of? We know that it's in glass. Think about the way she's using those glass forms. This is called Salish weave, and it was done in 2014. Susan Point's mother was a weaver and taught her how to weave bulrush mats as well. And the process of creating a sculpture like this is absolutely mind-blowing to me. It's called slumping, and it's also sand carving. So you can see it's almost like an etching in the glass, but the way the glass kind of has that wave and movement, you can even look at the reflection behind it. It gives you the sense of wave and movement. It's done through a process of being heated in a kiln, and then the glass kind of slides down until it creates that form, and then is cooled off so quickly that it holds the form. So you can imagine she's done that multiple times with different pieces, and then has somehow interconnected those pieces together, which is, to me, absolutely incredible. She said, in 1986, I ventured into a new medium, creating artwork in glass. At the time, this was a medium that local galleries would not accept. They said it was not native art because of my use of the glass medium, a non-traditional medium, which was not one native artists use. But as I mentioned before, she kept doing it, and she began making spindle whorls out of glass as well. She even did a residence at the Pilchuck Glass School in 2002 to learn more and more about these processes that she can use. Let's take a look at one more point, or one more kind of little aspect of this work. You can think about what it reminds you of, and remember that Susan Point is always referring to animals that are from within Coast Salish territory, always connected to land. This work is called Orca Pod. It's from 1997. And again, she's working with glass. I'm sure you can see that from this image. And you can also see the way that she has carved into kind of the bottom. It's almost like a stand or plinth at the bottom. She's carved the design elements in as well. Point says, when I design and work on a piece, regardless of medium, there are countless stories, thoughts, and memories that go through my mind. I'm redesigning the artwork all the time to challenge myself and to experiment and express my ways of always being original. The next work we're going to look at and talk about is a very personal, original work that Susan Point created in response. And before I did want to mention too, it does have an image that is of a residential school. So before we zoom into that image, I did want to let you know that. This is a work that Point describes as a symbol of power for those of us who have the strength and resilience to survive the residential school system. That's how she describes it. So we'll look up a little bit closer. We can think about the different pieces of this work. First of all, we can think about symbolism. We can think about the way that images are being used. So if we go back to that last slide just for a second, we can think about first that large central figure that she's creating. And then we'll look up close at how she's using Coast Salish design elements. We see a photo of St. Augustine's residential school and seashells in the background. And then it's hard to not notice the form that she is creating is actually a cross. So when she was 9 years old, Susan Point was forced to leave her family and go to a residential school. And for anyone joining us that's not familiar, residential schools were schools that operated in Canada for over 150 years. Over 150,000 children attended these schools. Some never returned to their families. And there were more than 130 residential schools that tried with the intent to remove Indigenous ways of life and culture from Indigenous people from the mid-1800s until 1996. The last residential school closed less than 25 years ago. So I'll put a link in the chat from the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation that includes more educational resources about the impact of residential schools. It's a big conversation that needs to be had with care and with people that you trust. If you'd like to push further this conversation and share truth with others, I'll put that link in the chat now. So Susan Point says, let's take a look a little bit more closely now at some of these other forms. I talked about the symbol of the cross form, and I didn't mention why. It's that St. Augustine's residential school was funded by the government, but it was also run by, and the administration teams and teachers were from the Roman Catholic faith in this particular school. So the point says, this original work is impossible for me to title, as unfortunately it represents the disconnection from the wisdom and teachings I lost as a young child, as well as our Hunkaminam language. And if we look closely at the forms, take a look for how she's showing her own identity and inserting herself by using Coast Salish design elements. And then also think about, in the previous works, in the prints, we notice that reference to a spindle whirl, that spinning motion she's showing. She said, the beautiful imagery within each grid is made of butterfly wings, overlapping each other in a circular format that represent the cycle of life and the close connection of my people upon this land. On the wings of the butterflies are designs in my contemporary art style depicting salmon, eagles, and ravens, Coast Salish imagery that was taken from me as a child. And to state again, she says, this piece is a symbol of the power for those of us who had the strength and resilience to survive the residential school system. So let's look closely now at another work that Susan Point uses as a symbol of power, expressing resilience, expressing her culture's proud living tradition. And this is a screen print called Salish Vision that was created in 2011. As I mentioned before, please feel free, anyone that would like to jump in with comments, ideas, or questions, feel free to do so. So we'll look at this work first, thinking about all of the themes we've already talked about, the Coast Salish design elements, and that idea that the longer you look at an artwork of Susan Point's, the more you see. So you can look for those animals that she's using that are connected to Coast Salish territory, to Musqueam territory, and also look at how she's made them so, or she's kind of composed this work so they're all interconnected. So I see kind of like the head of a salmon, but it's also the leg of a frog, which is also turning into kind of the arm that moves into what looks like a bird-like figure. And this figure that looks like a bird-like figure, Susan Point describes as, or she identifies as a thunderbird. She describes the thunderbird as a protective figure. She says, I have attempted to honor some of the unique expressions of the thunderbird in a series of images that reflect the ancestral artistic diversity of my people. These images are original interpretations inspired by motifs found on old pieces, spindle whorls, mat creasers, petroglyphs that I have researched. She says, although original in design, they reflect traditional formats explored long ago by Salish artists who profoundly depicted the legends and stories about the thunderbird in their unique and individual style. I hope these are images that are interpreted as proud symbols of a living tradition. And again, let's take another look at an example of a work. Oh, here's her quote here as well. We'll take a look at a work that's again showing her connection to land. She's actually showing us what she calls one of her favorite, most respected animals, the frog. She says, I have a deep and total respect for the life of the frog, which is an important part of my culture as told to me many times by my mother, as she learned from the elders of her time. She says, prior to European contact, throughout most of the year, my people, the Coast Salish, lived outdoors, hunting and fishing in the spring and gathering berries, shellfish, and cattails in the summer. Towards the end of November, as the days grew shorter and when the frogs stopped singing, my people knew it was time to move back into their longhouses for a winter ceremony. During this time, they feasted and gave things away and continued to do so until all the food, clothing, basket, and blanket giveaways were gone. Also, during these winter months, they would perform their spiritual dances. In February, when the frogs started singing again, ending the season of spiritual dancing, my people left their longhouses and returned to hunting and gathering. She says, as a young child and into my late teens, before any development took place within our small community, there were thousands of distinct frog voices that heralded these seasonal changes throughout our Musqueam community. Over time, however, echoes of those song-filled evenings drastically changed. So if we look at this work, that's a little bit kind of to express her connection to this work and how it is deeply connected to the land and her history and her being. Again, we look at those components. You can see how she's using the design forms again and again and again. This is a really cool example of how she's really showing us the cycles of life. So we talked about how this is about frogs, one of her favorite, most respected animals, but it's not just showing us a frog. If you look more closely, what else is it showing you? How's it showing the life cycle of a frog? She's still giving us that sense of almost like a spinning movement. So again, referencing her research done on spindle whorls, but we can see not just the frog legs, you can see the tadpoles. And then once you see the tadpoles kind of, emerge to your eyes, then you can see, oh, there's even tinier tadpoles. And then you can see the eggs in the center. So the way that she's really connected these different stages of an animal's life is really incredible. And again, that motion of a circle is showing us that that's ongoing, an ongoing connection. Let's compare this work to another artwork that you actually might recognize. So take a look at that design and see what is similar. Does anyone recognize this artwork on the right? You may see one every day and not even notice that it's a Susan Point artwork. But this is a work, so it's this print, of course, reimagined in iron. And I should have mentioned earlier that this print was designed in collaboration with Susan Point's daughter, Keilah, who's an artist in her own right as well. So this design, it was created and reimagined as a public commission, and it was that was called Art Underfoot. It's a storm drain, or what you could call a manhole cover. And once you notice these and look closely at these, you can't help but see them all over the city of Vancouver, which is on unceded Musqueam territory. So it's really that reminder and connection to the land and history of the land. So it started in 2004, this program called Art Underfoot, and it was actually a competition. And hundreds of artists that live in the Vancouver region applied. And in 2007, Susan Point and Keilah designs won and were installed all over the city. So next time you see one, you can kind of be reminded that the land that we're on, the connection to it, and share it with the people that you're with. And you can remember standing on Coast Salish land. So let's look at one more public artwork. And then I'm going to share a little bit about how Susan Point inspired me to create an artwork that you can also. So I don't know if anyone recognizes these or if you've seen these before. These are Salish welcome figures. And the curator is the person who put the exhibition together in 2017 at the Vancouver Art Gallery, worked with Susan Point to select the works and install them. His name is Grant Arnold. The curator of Susan Point's exhibition describes these carvings as combinations of tradition and innovation. So inventing a new and unique vision. He writes, travelers from abroad pass between these figures as they enter the Canada Customs Hall in Vancouver International Airport, which is on unceded Musqueam territory. Upon entering the hall, the travelers first encounter a pair of human figures, a male with fishers or a mink in the left, a female with eagles on her chest on the right, deeply carved from red cedar in a manner based solely on the traditional house post once found in the interiors of Coast Salish longhouses. On the other side of each figure, there's a shallow relief, or a carved image, of a human with upstretched arms, a traditional gesture of welcome. He goes on to say they speak to the central role Point has played in the resurgence of Coast Salish art and the extraordinary commitment that has marked her practice and driven her ongoing pursuit of new possibilities. All right, how's everybody doing? Let's take a look at one last Susan Point work that just really expresses her continued experimentation. We looked at it quickly at the beginning. And now you can think of, when I see this now that I've learned a little bit more about her work, I see the way she's using that negative space again. And I can see the animals that she's creating that are so important to her history, to her people, to her connection to land. And I can also, of course, look for those symbols of identity, the Coast Salish design elements that she's using. This work is called Northern Lights from 2008. And it's nice to see. It's also a screen print, but it's a very different kind of a design than some of the other works. So we can see how she's pushing that experimentation and also using colors in different ways. I wish I could describe to you how she screen printed all of these multiple colors with different pulls. My guess would be that she would do a pull of all of the blue ones first, with a specific stencil, then have another stencil to do all of the red, another stencil to do all of the orange. So you can really start to imagine all of the layers that she's creating and designing just to create this one work. Susan Point has earned so many awards. She's been awarded the honorary doctorate in fine arts by University of Victoria in 2000 and 2004. She was appointed to the Royal Academy of Art. 2006, appointed the officer of the Order of Canada, an honorary doctorate by Simon Fraser University, Emily Carr University, an honorary doctorate from UBC. 2012, the Queen Elizabeth Diamond Jubilee Medal. In 2018, the Lifetime Achievement Award for contribution to First Nations culture by the BC Achievement Awards. 2018, she also was awarded the Vancouver Civic Merit Award for achievement in arts and culture. And 2018, the Audain Prize for lifetime achievement in the visual arts. Her son describes, in the early days, my mom's career as an artist, it was neither her goal nor her intention to become celebrated and have her work recognized. She was simply learning to express herself, but now countless generations will be trying to emulate the body of work that she has created. So Point's work has created a legacy of widespread appreciation for Coast Salish design through her public artworks, through her many prints, her carvings and collections across Canada. Her work is a constant reminder of the living Coast Salish tradition, as we've mentioned earlier. And it expresses the interconnection of all beings, cycles of life, as well as a deep knowledge and respect for the land. So next time you see a carving or a work, you can look for those Coast Salish design elements to maybe gain a little bit of more of an understanding about the research that the artist did to create that work. And you can remember the importance of learning about and connecting to your own history, as well as respecting the histories, traditions, and territories of other cultures and of other people. So what we're going to do now, thank you everybody so much again for your attention, for joining us, for looking at Susan Point work along with me. I hope that I've expressed my deep respect for her work from my perspective and my position. What I'm going to do now is we're going to think about ways that we can respond to this work. And I'm going to talk through it a little bit, but first I want to explain the materials. So I wanted to think about that theme of interconnection and connection to nature. So what I'm using is, you can see here, just pencil and a piece of paper. I'm doing my design. So I'm not using Coast Salish design elements, of course. They're not mine to use. It's not my heritage, but I'm thinking about, okay, when I think about growth cycles, and something that I'm connected to, where I grew up in Ontario, there's a lot of oak trees. I used to collect acorns, and that sense of like growth and tree and acorn, and growth and tree and acorn to me is a representation of a cycle of life. So I just sketched it out, and then I drew over it with black. And what I'm doing here is I'm putting that styrofoam underneath it. And I'm kind of, it's almost like carving. I'm not almost like carving, but I'm pushing into the styrofoam a little bit. So you have to push a little bit harder than if you're just drawing, because you want that imprint in the styrofoam. I don't know if anyone's ever done printmaking like this. And now I'm really pushing into the styrofoam so you can get that, you can see this is just an indent, because this is going to be the negative space when we create our print very shortly. I'll show you now. All I'm using here are washable markers. So I think these are just washable markers from a dollar store. I'm thinking about experimenting with color a little bit. Susan Point experimented with color. I also want to mention too, I'm using styrofoam here, and we want to think about the connection, interconnection to all beings in all life. So you want to use upcycled styrofoam. So something that would be otherwise used once and thrown away. This plate can be used again and again and again to recreate, when I call it a plate, that's what printing term for something that you use to print from. And then what I'm using, I'm just putting water onto a piece of paper. So I have my colored plate, and I'm gonna see how that worked. And this one didn't work. It worked okay, but I don't have like that full rich color. I'm also just experimenting. I didn't use enough water in the first one. This one, you can see it's kind of like, or the ink is spreading too much. So I used too much water. And here I just kind of tried again, maybe a little bit too much water, but this one you can finally see those clear lines. So you can see that negative space, the white of the paper that's creating the lines. And then what I could do, I could keep experimenting with different colors. I could use that styrofoam plate again and again and again. Look for things around your house that you might be able to use to upcycle and to kind of draw into in the same way. But I think this is a great process for simplicity of materials and just ways that you can print again and again and again. So think about that design process. Think about making sure that you're pushing hard enough when you draw the design into that piece of styrofoam, whether it be, you know, a tray from food or anything that you found. And then just experiment with the colors. You put the water right onto the paper and you see that ink transfer. So that's just an example of a way that I was inspired to work, thinking about those themes and thinking again about printmaking. And it reminded me of Susan Point's incredible, meticulous learning and attention to detail when she creates prints, and that it takes a lot of practice. So I think I need a lot more practice too. So I want to invite back Keilah and Catherine here, and thank you for sharing along with me and enjoying looking at some of Susan Point's work along with me. Feel free to add any thoughts or ideas, but I'm so appreciative that you've invited me to be here in this space with you today. And again, it was such an honor to be in the space with Elder Bruce Robinson today as well.
Totally. Maybe I'll just start. I just want to say hi, Chika. Thank you, Christina, for joining us today to share some knowledge and also a little fun activity with us and our youth. Also, yeah, I just want to express my gratitude. I know Bruce isn't here with us right now, but just say hi, Chika, again to Bruce for joining us and starting us off in a good way. I just wanted to share a little piece, I guess, for our viewers out there who may not know about the Overly Creative Minds program at UNYA. So yeah, lots of good stuff. So we're an arts and cultural program for Indigenous youth ages 11 to 24. We're also a multi-purpose arts and music studio as well. Right now, a lot of our programming is online and virtual. So if youth want, they can check us out on our Facebook and Instagram. Our handle there is UNYA OCM, so that's UNYA OCM. What else? Sorry, just checking my notes here. We also have a really awesome program right now. It's called UNYA to Go. So youth can pop by UNYA, the back entrance to the OCM studio here, and grab a bag of art supplies. It's all free. We're also giving out different types of supply kits. So yeah, come on down, check that out. We're also giving out things like bus tickets and other resources like food. Another opportunity I wanted to tell everybody about right now is we're hosting another youth performance as part of the annual Talking Stick Festival, but this year will be a little bit different. This year will be virtual, so youth can sign up to submit a video recording of a performance, or they can sign up to have their performance recorded at the Culture Theater C-Lab. Honoraria will be provided, and also youth who participate can enter to win prizes, including a pair of Apple AirPods. So super awesome. Again, if any of you are interested in any of our programming, check us out on Facebook and Instagram. That's UNYA OCM. And I think that's all I wanted to share with everybody for now. Just want to say another hello and thank you to all of the youth that joined us today, and any community members and potential new youth out there. Hello. Yeah, it was great. Thank you again, Christina. That was super fun, and I hope we get to do something like this in the future. So, hi, Chad.
My honor. Thank you. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, bye guys.